Reprise du débat, the honourable member for Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, you only have to listen to the constant sound of horns outside of Parliament to hear the siren of Canadian voices of discontent with the state of our country. Meeting and having an open conversation with truckers and now farmers are not signs of defeat or concession as the government tries to make it appear, but it might be the only way to end this protest and send our truckers home. It's a sign of leadership. It's the job we all signed up to as parliamentarians. We are the representatives of everyone in our riding, not just those who voted for us, not just those we agree with, everyone. Canadians need hope, Mr. Speaker. They want to know that the sacrifices they have made for their businesses, their families, their friends and their fellow Canadians by stepping up to get vaccines and boosters means that they will see the light at the end of the tunnel. Canadians see what other nations are and see that the hope that is coming from within them. The UK has lifted all restrictions from COVID-19. The Americans have full stadiums as they watch some exciting football for the AFC and the NFC championships last weekend. Go Rams. While Canadians heard the health minister muse about seeing it coming about a mandatory vaccine mandate on January 7th, and when Quebec announced an anti-vax tax, the Prime Minister said, that could work. Vaccines are the best tool for fighting COVID-19, but we must use hope, not fear. And over 85% of Canadians who have made the choice on their own accord to get vaccinations want to know that there is hope and not fear as we end a pandemic and enter an endemic. Part of that is Canada's ability to develop vaccines to contribute to COVAX and provide alternatives for the vaccine hesitant. Quebec has 2 vaccine facilities that can provide these options. Both Medicago and Novavax, a plant-based vaccine and a protein-based vaccine, could provide Canadian jobs and help us meet COVAX goals, to which we have only hit a quarter of our promised goals, and help vaccinate the vaccine hesitant here at home and the vaccine starved across the globe. But the government has not yet been able to see approval of these vaccines, both of whom submitted approvals in early 2021, and Canada is yet to produce a vaccine through this pandemic. Instead of acquiring vaccines or rapid testing in a timely manner, or approving vaccines that would help get the world vaccinated, that would help quell COVID-19, the government response has been consistently to dither and spend money it doesn't have. As our debt is now reaching a jaw-dropping $1.2 trillion, the results of that desire to spend our way out of the pandemic has resulted in some fear-reaching results for our country. A housing crisis that is the worst in the world, an inflation level that is the highest it's been in 30 years, the largest increase in poverty and inequality in this country in 20 years. The government's continued fantasy of spending to end the pandemic has not worked yet, and it won't work now. We need real solutions to solve our crises. Government needs to work on listening to Canadians, reducing red tape, and needs to allow the Canadian economy and Canadian innovators to be unleashed as this pandemic becomes an endemic instead of its failed spend to oblivion failed policies. Housing is a crisis, and an existential crisis that requires massive ambition and innovation to solve. Working with all levels of government, working with the housing industry, we can help lead and find solutions now. Mr. Speaker, we have over 200,000 skilled workers that are in limbo with Canada immigration, which includes skilled trades that could start building homes today. The immigration minister acknowledged this week that the skilled worker shortage is in flux, that he doesn't know when it'll be open again, maybe by 2022 at the end of the year. But we need $85 million, again, more money, to fix it. And meanwhile, Canada Trades are screaming for more people to build homes and are not building them because of the lack of labor. This is an issue that could have been fixed years ago, and now with housing a crisis, is only adding more fuel to the house fire that is our housing market. The Conservative plan to use 15% of existing vacant government buildings for housing would have meant that trades could build units of housing today, not in the 10 years that it takes Toronto to build a high-rise now. Working with provinces in declaring a crisis on housing, we could start to massively contribute to an economic boom that would create jobs and create homes. More importantly, Mr. Speaker, we at the Conservative Party believe that if we're going to add more debt to the Canadian public, it should be on investments that better this country, including our health care. For C8, our opposition to this motion is that if we were going to spend $70 billion, then why, Mr. Speaker, are we not spending it on health care and increasing health care capacity in our ICUs and in our hospitals? Why some of our provinces were locked down and businesses closed were completely because of the lack of staffed health care capacity in this country. Of hospital beds per capita, in the 32 most developed nations in the world, Canada was behind 37 of the most developed nations, including being dead last in the G7. As a matter of fact, Japan, Korea, and Germany have 4 to 6 times the amount of beds, staffed beds, per capita that Canada does. In the Conservative platform, we had dedicated $60 billion, if we're talking about money, to new healthcare transfer spending that would increase healthcare capacity. Mr. Speaker, if we're going to spend money, whether that be for C2 or today for C8, I ask you this. Would it not be better for all Canadians that instead of money that helps businesses that are shut down, that it should have been money preventing the economy being shut down? This bill is no different. This $70 billion needs to be spent now in healthcare transfers to increase both healthcare and ICU capacity and to increase our healthcare professionals that we are desperately missing in our regions. We need healthcare professionals, nurse practitioners, nurses, and we need doctors. Mr. Speaker, in Bay of Quinte, we are short over 30 doctors. That means that residents who need primary health care are going to the ER. Canada is short over 70,000 nurses. Spending $70 billion more of taxpayer dollars without that money being invested into healthcare first and foremost is a travesty, because it will add to the growing inflation this country is plaguing this country, and it does not take care of the problems causing more lockdowns in this country and more angry Canadians desperately looking for the government to listen to them. Mr. Speaker, if we're going to fix inflation, the housing crisis, if we're going to listen to angry Canadians, we must fix those issues that are plaguing them, and we need to fix them now. Spending more money we don't have that fuels our already mammoth inflation, housing crisis, and growing inequality without fixing the problems that will help Canadians get through the dark tunnel which has been this pandemic and into more of the light that will be living with an endemic and getting lives back to normal. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. The member isn't being consistent. On the one hand, he's saying, cut back, stop the spending. He opposes this legislation because it's spending money. Then on the other hand, he's saying, spend more money on health care transfers, even though this government has sent more health care dollars, real dollars in health care transfers, record amounts, historic records amounts. Not only that, we're dealing with mental health and many other issues in health care. Within this bill, there's $1.72 billion being allocated to purchase rapid testing and equipment such as that, rapid testing. If we didn't spend the money, those tests wouldn't be there for that. Then it would have to be the provinces that would have to come up with it. Does he not support the financial expenditures that are targeted within C8?
The Honourable Member for Bay of Quinte.
Madam Speaker, I support the spending that needs to happen to increase our health care now, and I supported rapid testing a year and a half ago when we asked for it and didn't get it. We had residents lined up for rapid testing because there was no rapid testing. And Madam Speaker, now that they're saying they're going to fix it, we don't need that. We need health care fixed. Let's put money towards health care and fix our problems in health care.
Questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de Abitibi-Témiscamingue.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I'd also like to say I was very touched by your statement this week. Thank you for that. Now, my question for my colleague, following up on what the colleague on the other side said, when it comes to healthcare spending, who's spending the money? The provincial or federal level? When the federal government keeps taxpayers' money in its own pockets and only hands it out with strings attached, does that mean that there's a structural problem here? And wouldn't the way to fix this in a sustainable way, wouldn't it be to just send the money to the provinces with no strings attached? The honourable member for Bay of Quinte.
We all agree that the provinces want just as much money sometimes as the federal government does, and thinks that sometimes it just grows on trees. But I know the federal government has to be responsible for what it's putting its money towards, and I understand the provinces will decide where it wants that money. But if we put money towards federal transfers for healthcare capacity, and we as the federal government can always track that capacity, then we're going to be fixing the problem once and for all. And not, again, just beds, staffed beds. We need staff and we need beds. We need to work with the provinces to make that happen.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Vancouver East. Oh, Vancouver Kingsway, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Picking up my honourable colleague's comments, he's absolutely right. Among OECD countries, Canada's ICU beds per capita is less than everyone but Mexico. We're 26 out of 27 in terms of number of doctors per thousand. Among developed countries, we rank 10th out of 10 in terms of wait times. But of course, the reason for this is that in 2014, the Harper Conservatives capped the federal health transfer at 3% when healthcare costs are rising at 5%. Then, of course, the current government said they'd change that, but then they adopted the Harper cuts. So I'm asking my honourable colleague, will he finally acknowledge that part of the problem today is the Conservative and Liberal cuts to healthcare that kept federal transfer at 3%? And does he agree with the NDP that it's time to raise that so that we can start properly funding the healthcare system in this country?
The honourable member for Bay of Quinte.
Well, I had a kid in kindergarten who pushed me, and, I don't hold the grudge on him that happened 20, 30 years ago. We got to focus on today. I'm not sure what happened in the Harper government. I wasn't here, but I love when Stephen Harper's brought up because he was a great prime minister. Yes, we have to look at healthcare. And healthcare means looking at healthcare ICU capacity. It means looking at staff. It means looking at nurse practitioners and doctors. So I know my honourable colleagues on the Health Committee, I know they're going to be studying that. I look forward to those results, and let's get those to the House, and let's get those passed so that Canadians can benefit from better healthcare. Thank you, sir.